Welcome to our webinar. We're Cherry Talent Group, and we're going to talk about building your client experience from the inside out. I'm Anna Christensen, and we have Suman Cherry here, who has 25 years of experience in the recruiting and HR industries. And so you might be wondering, what does a group that does HR and recruiting know about the client experience? And it's actually a lot, because it really does start in the very beginning with your people. So Suman's going to tell us a little bit more about that and give us some tips and tricks. Suman, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anna. And thanks so much for joining us. Yeah, like Anna said, it's like, why are we talking about the client experience? Well, and we're going to explain it in this presentation, but what we're going to really focus on is the foundation to this. What is the goal? Like, why do we want this? And steps to achieve this consistent client experience, practical ways that you can create this. We're also going to do a quick activity at the end, which is going to be, so I hope you stay around. It'll be interesting and I think pretty thought-provoking as well. And we're also going to answer some questions. Honestly, this will be a brief webinar, so I hope you guys stay with us through it. All right, let's start with, why does it matter, the client experience? Well, a consistent client experience builds trust, loyalty, and referrals, and it helps your business grow. I think we can all say that, I know for us specifically, when we get referrals, those are always the best clients for us, right? And I'm sure it's the same for you as well. When you create a very consistent client experience and consistency, it does build trust, it does build loyalty, and it builds referrals, and it helps your business grow. But I think the part that's really interesting is most people will always start with processes and software. Like, oh, in order to have a very great client experience, we need all these processes in place for it to happen. And the truth is, we've seen it. People who have similar roles, similar processes, and one is very engaged and one isn't. And so why is that? Because your client experiences actually comes from the people in your organization delivering that experience every day to your people, your clients. And taking a step back with this is what we're kind of talking about, is that really ultimately underneath all of this, the people are your foundation, right? And I thought this was a really interesting stat. 70% of customer experience is driven by how the employees feel at work, right? So you cannot deliver consistency to your clients without consistency inside your team. So we're going to talk a little more about that, like how can I create that, so don't get too overwhelmed. But I think this is a really important thing to understand, that, and why does it matter how they feel? Because when your people are engaged, when your people feel seen, when they feel heard, they deliver that also to your clients. So that's why it's so important. The universal experience goal. All right, so what do we really want? What's the goal of all of this, right? What do we ultimately want? I think all of us can say we want our clients to feel seen, we want them to feel supported, and we want them to feel valued every single time. And this really matters with anyone they're interacting with, whether this be one department or a different department, whether this be somebody way up on the food chain and someone a little bit lower. You want every interaction that client is having to be very similar throughout the company. In order to do that, it requires alignment behind the scenes. That's the key. You have to be able to create that alignment behind the scenes. So I come from more of I've had my own businesses and those kind of things, but I'm curious, like with Anna, because Anna comes from more of a corporate world, how do you see this in what you've done with your work?
Sure, I think alignment is probably one of the most important things. And having worked with really in large companies with really large sales teams, I think everyone thinks, when they think of the client experience, I think they most readily think of, okay, my sales team, right? And a lot of like really foolproof systems and processes and things there for that sales team to create a consistent client experience. But I think the breakdown sometimes is, you know, who are the people that you have in those roles, right? And I think that goes back to like, who are you recruiting into the organization? Because that their buy-in, their integrity, their emotional investment is really what's going to make it consistent from how your client feels, from salesperson to salesperson. So I think that's really, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But then also alignment goes a step further to, are you in an organization where a client works with multiple departments, right? So they work with a salesperson first, then they maybe work with customer service. They might work with a construction manager or a project manager. Are they going to have that consistent experience at each touch point? Because if you have a salesperson who's giving a really great customer experience, they are making the client feel super supported and heard, and it's just it's a great experience. They're going to expect that with your all of your other teams as well. So that's really an alignment, within the organization too. And I think that we'll find that comes from a culture standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. That is a really good piece is that, you know, I think this is the alignment piece is so important and it's the people piece. So moving into the next one, first step, hire right, right? So what do we mean by hiring right, right? So yes, when we recruit, we're always, we have to look for experience, right? We have to make sure they can do the job. But there's another tier that I think a lot of companies miss this opportunity to do is hiring for alignment. And really alignment comes from values, right? Skills can be taught, values can't. And I think this is a really important thing because you have to be able to interview in a way that you can assess someone's values because their values are going to translate into that client experience, right? Because if you can have someone who has all the skills in the world, but if they're not someone who, is valuing that client experience or valuing the other team members throughout it, that can also create a very uncomfortable client experience. It can also happen where you have people who have the best meaning intentions, but maybe the reason they're doing it is not the best intention. It doesn't align the best for the company. So you can have situations where someone is very good at selling, but maybe they're over promising, under delivering. They're promising a lot just to get the sale done, but they're not following the process in the sense like they're not holding that client responsible for their part, or they're not also following the process that you guys have. So it's very important, this values piece. We cannot emphasize it enough. And what you really want to ask yourself is, does this person reflect the experience we want our clients to have? So as you're talking to candidates, as you're evaluating them, as you're watching, that process, is this someone that you want in front of your clients? Is this someone that you would feel comfortable talking to your clients? Do you feel like this person could provide the right experience for your clients? And I think this is a really important piece, and that's going to always come back to values for sure. We touched on this a little bit, but behavioral questions, interviews, what this really comes down to is let's go underneath the surface, right? It's easy to go and look at other people's resumes and just talk about capacity, like your experience for 90% of the interview. What have you done? But let's go underneath and let's ask questions around challenging situations, how they've handled things. Do they have humility? Are they able to take accountability and really going deeper? And when you think you haven't gone deep enough, go a little deeper, right? We have to remember these people, you're bringing these people into your organization. They're important. What they bring in affects everything. I think involving team members in the hiring process is so important. And I think this goes to show, even if that person is not reporting directly to that group or to that team, but they're going to be interacting with them quite a bit, that manager, that person in charge of that group also needs to have that conversation with them. And the reason is because, again, we don't want the client experience to stop with one department. We want that consistency across the board. So we want that person to be able to interview that person as well and to see how are they going to work and function in this department and how they're going to work. So, yeah, and I think this is really important, getting really clear on what a great client experience is for your organization, understanding what that is, and then being able to convey that story to your people. And if there is process or structure or accountability that needs to be had for that, then making sure that that's a first priority. And then I think I love this. This is something we do as well, is creating blueprints, right? So you know what the values are of your organization, you know what your client experience is, and you know what those behaviors are that person needs to be doing to fulfill that. You create blueprints, and those blueprints become your templates of the types of candidates that you bring on for your organization. This one, I'm going to let Anna kind of run with this because she kind of handles this a lot. But what we've realized is it's not just about hiring the person. That's not just going to be engagement. It's also, this piece is actually, I would say, even more important. The onboarding piece, this is something that companies have a hard time doing well, just to be honest. They're really good about orientating people, but they're not as good about integrating people. So I'm going to let Anna kind of walk you through what that means and what that looks like.
Sure. Thanks, Suman. So we have another big stat for you guys. 69% of employees are more likely to stay at a company. 3 or more years if they experience great onboarding. And I think we can all agree, as long as these employees are engaged and they have buy-in into your organization, having that tenure is great. It's great not only for your culture, from a mentorship perspective, but also for your client experience. If you have clients that can work with the same groups of people throughout their time with you, that's a really good thing. And again, it's about not so much. I mean, I think sometimes, especially if you're busier or maybe you don't have a process in place, onboarding's about the new hire paperwork and passing out a handbook. But it's really more than that, right? It's not about that first day orientation. It's about how do you get people integrated into your organization, into your culture, integrated with your clients very early on in the process, right? You want to create that buy-in into your culture, into your values, but also into creating that client experience and really buy into that belief in what you're doing day to day. So how do you do that? Here's some tips. Number one, we talk about this a lot, empathy and emotional intelligence, but making sure you're training for that, right? Because training isn't just about the day-to-day skill set that needs to happen, learning the systems that someone's going to be using every day. But what are those emotional intelligence pieces, right? How do they interact with others? How do they handle conflict? You know, how do they interact with the client? Are they putting clients' needs first, per se? So really making sure we're training for that. And I know that can be a tough thing to do. There's a lot of great resources out there to really bring emotional intelligence to the forefront. And part of that is being available for role plays and tag-alongs. This does take a little more time, but if you're thinking about onboarding from an integration standpoint, this can be great, because they can this new hire can watch someone else's client interactions and learn from that. You can be present for their interactions with the client, and really that's a great training environment to make sure that you are seeing some of those things that you look for back from your candidate persona, that they are interacting with clients in a consistent fashion, to some of your other more tenured team members. Also pairing new hires with the culture mentor. Maybe someone that's been in your organization 3+ years that shows a lot of engagement. Making sure that they have them as a resource. They can really learn a lot about your values and your culture and how to interact with those clients from that mentor. And this one's super important. And I know it's hard when, companies get really busy and maybe you're bringing new hires on because you really are, as an organization, overwhelmed with new business, which is great. We love to help companies in the growth mode. But making sure we're doing these 30, 60, 90 reviews. It's really a temperature check-in. How is this new hire feeling? Are they getting closer to that buy-in? Are they feeling like they're integrating into your organization appropriately? And really just because, if you wait and check in maybe, 3 or 6 months down the road, they're not already engaged at that point, it may be too late. So again, just really checking and making sure they're kind of, checking the boxes as they go is really important.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like in training for empathy and emotional intelligence, to me, it just really goes back to that connection piece. A lot of that's modeling in the environment as well. Like people model leaders and your managers. So if your managers and your leaders are leading that way, that also is like training them naturally in that way as well, is them being able to have people that are following this way and understanding that those are non-negotiables. Like I think a lot of that has to do with just setting very, very strong behavioral structures around that with the core values and making sure those are your standards and teaching on those and that and explaining situations that might occur. Like one of the things that we do here is one of our core values is assume positive intent, which I think is a very interesting piece because I think with clients sometimes you can sometimes clients they're not in a good mood or they're having stress going on and we can take that on and we can sort of have a negative feeling about it. But having that core value of like we always see everything from positive intent means that we're not taking things personal, right? We're not taking that on. We're not taking things personal. And I think that's a really important piece because when you don't have that, and I'm sure you've seen this, Anna, when you have situations where people don't have that, then you have everyone gossiping about that client, and then that turns into a whole other thing. And we don't want that, right? That's not going to create a good customer experience. We want everyone to be treated equally, right? We want everyone to be treated well, regardless if maybe they're a little more challenging as a client, so to speak. Step 3, and I know this is like Captain Obvious, but build a healthy culture. You want good people, you want engaged people, you want your clients to be happy. Build an intentional, healthy culture. Healthy cultures create engaged clients, they create or engaged employees, and they create consistent client care. If you want your clients to giving you being your raving fans and they love you and they're putting, make sure your people are happy. And that is from a healthy culture. Now, I think this is really, really fun, but like culture isn't ping pong tables, okay? Culture isn't fun Friday. Yes, those are nice things to have. But what culture really is, great culture is when things are hard, how do we act? Right? Because businesses have their periods, economies come through, people leave, leaders leave, situations happen, we all have things. But how do the managers and the leaders show up in those moments? And how do they model that for everyone in the team, right? How do we show up when things get hard? Because that is what creates a healthy culture. That way you're not creating fear, micromanaging. We've seen the other side, right? And how do we do that? Some tips. There's a lot of tips, but this is some of our main tips. Reinforce the client experience daily with leadership and accountability. Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on this, having these specific standards and keeping people accountable to those standards, right? There's just non-negotiable standards, and that's what it is, right? And we just make sure that people understand that, and we make sure they buy into that story. I think all of that, really, the onboarding is this buy into the story, understanding what the client experience looks like and how they can show up for that. And celebrate behaviors. Yeah, I mean, when someone gets an email and says, "Oh, the client's happy," like I know for me, like when my team gets that, or that's like the best news. Like we're ready to have a party for that, and that's how you should treat it. Every time your client tells you how amazing someone does or what they've done something extra, that should be a big deal. That should be an absolute deal. You should be making a big deal with your people. You should be congratulating them because that's going to build more of that as well. That because it always feels good, right, Anna? When your clients are happy, there's nothing that feels better. Um, Encourage regular feedback and one-on-ones. I mean, I think this comes back to what she was saying with the onboarding, the 30, 60, 90 plan, but also taking that step further. Really amazing companies that have amazing leadership, they are connected to their people. They take the time, no matter how busy they are, they take the time for 15, 20 minutes to just ask, how are you doing? I noticed that your productivity's been a little lower the last month. Everything okay at home? Right? They start noticing, and that helps your people feel seen, heard, and valued. And here's the secret: your people feel seen, heard, and valued, your clients feel seen, heard, and valued. It's just how it works. Um, and then tracking alignment with culture and value scorecards. I mean, we love scorecards around here. We have our own individual scorecard. We meet every week. We go through our scorecards. We talk about accountability. And all of it is to make sure that we are having the best client experience, right? And we're supporting our people in that. I'm gonna let Anna kind of go through this because this is kind of her expertise, establishing this client feedback loop as well.
Yeah, I love client feedback. I've done a lot of client surveys in my time in corporate America, and I think, it's a hard thing, right? Because it can induce fear. Like we don't
Right.
want to ask our clients for feedback. We don't want to ask them how they're doing because we're afraid we'll hear something negative. But how I've always approached that and kind of gotten over the fear is any feedback is good feedback, right? They say that about everything. And knowing, where we're doing great is good. Let's make sure we hold that up and we hold that standard. But knowing where we're not meeting expectation is great too, because that's where we can work to improve.
Yeah.
Because again, just like not checking on your team, if you're not checking on your clients and you're just assuming everyone is happy all the time, all of a sudden, they could disappear. They could end their contract or end their business with you because they were upset about something and they didn't feel comfortable bringing it up, but also no one was asking them for that feedback.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it is scary, right? It is scary to ask someone because it's like, oh, what am I have to change? What are we doing wrong? What does that look like? But I think that's the whole point of having a healthy culture is that, like you just said, feedback. We always tell people, like, we want feedback, good feedback, bad feedback. We don't care because feedback is an opportunity to refine your way of doing it, to get better at it, to get more, to get your people more engaged. So yes, we love feedback around here. All right, so this is a little bit different, but what I'm going to ask you guys to do, and you guys can do it however you want to. If you want to close your eyes and imagine it, if you want to write some notes down, And this is just a starting point. This is a brainstorming. So you can take this and kind of run with it. But I want you to really feel into what I'm asking you. Define what a great client experience looks like in your company. This could be an example of someone of experience you've had. This could be a feeling, an emotional phase, whatever it is. Just start jotting some stuff down. Start thinking about this. And this is a great opportunity to go and have a brainstorm session with your people. And then once you understand what that looks like, what does a great client experience really look like? Okay, so then you can look at the process. Are we missing some pieces in the process? Do we need to add some pieces? And then what do my people need to understand about this? And making sure you have accountability to hold this as well, right, Anna?
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, so take it for what you want. You can run with it, or you can, do it now or do it in the future. But I think this is a very important question that we all should be asking at the starting point for all of this.
Like I don't really know how to articulate it, which makes sense. You might know what it is, but you may not be able to put it on paper. Like you said, that's a great time to bring in some of your people, and it's like, hey, what do you guys think makes a great client experience? You'll probably get a ton of answers, but those are usually pretty easily bucketed, right, into maybe two or three big ideas. And even bringing in some client feedback, asking your clients, like, who's really happy and what has their experience been like? And there you have it. There's your great client experience.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, well, I guess we're gonna end this with just any questions anyone has about what we've talked about today.
Yeah, and guys, if you've joined us on LinkedIn, feel free to drop your comments. Those will come through as questions. I know we have a few waiting for us. And if you've joined us via the webinar link, you can drop your questions in the chat as well. So, Suman, we have a couple already, and then
Awesome.
feel free to keep dropping those in, and we'll get to all of them. Okay, so our first one here, oh, these are good ones. How effective have you found behavioral interview techniques in identifying candidates who align with your company's core values and work culture?
I mean, I'll kind of jump into this just because I've been doing recruiting for about 25 years. And I'm going to be honest, like earlier in my career, it was very much based in questions around experience. I mean, yes, you would ask a little bit of core value questions. And I have to tell you, like, those candidates didn't stay as long. They just didn't. When it was very much based on money and it's very transactional. But when we dive in, now that we do it very differently at Cherry Talent Group, right? We do everything based in core values. This really, it may shorten the amount of candidates we submit over to our clients, but the types of client candidates we're sending over are such quality and they last, they stay. They're more interested in staying with the organization. Money isn't their biggest motivator. It's growth, it's expansion, it's being part of something, it's being seen. And when you ask those questions from core values, it's just an easier indication of who fits and who doesn't. Because when you have that defined, it's just easier to understand who matches and who doesn't. And even when you hire them, they kind of stick out like a sore thumb when they're not the right values. I mean, what do you think, Anna? Is that how your feeling is as well around it?
I completely agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so we have some rolling in here. How do you train managers during onboarding to recognize and respond to emotional cues with their team?
Anna, I'll let you run with this one.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to that emotional intelligence piece. And the checking in, because I think if you check in regularly, some managers check in once a day, some check in once a week, whatever that cadence is, I think staying with it and fostering that open communication makes it easier to talk about the tough things, right? So maybe you're noticing a drop in productivity, or you're noticing like, oh, like something feels different. Are you doing okay?
Right.
I think if you're talking pretty regularly and you're asking those questions regularly, it's going to be easier to have those conversations and also notice that in your team.
Yeah, and I think this concept of emotional intelligence, emotional react, I think this isn't something that has been talked about as much, right? It hasn't been something that has been discussed. So I think there's a lot of books, there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of people talking about this. So if I were a leader, if I'm a manager, I'm managing people, I would get really good at this. Yeah. Because when you are really good and when you yourself are really good at emotional intelligence, like you yourself can recognize other people's things, you're going to catch things faster. You're going to feel things are off. You're going to be able to notice when maybe you have the wrong person in a role, because it may not be the wrong person for the company. They might just be the wrong match for that position. maybe that's where the client experience is getting wobbly because maybe that's not the right role for them. So I can't emphasize as much like emotional intelligence, learning this, understanding how to connect with people, how to have conversations, how to have real conversations with people is going to change everything about your business for sure.
Foster culture for remote or hybrid teams.
I think you talked about this a little bit. I mean, I think it's just again about accountability. I mean, we work all hybrid, we work all remote, and I think it's just a lot of connection. We're always connecting all day. We have certain types of meetings that we go to every week. We are accountable to certain things. I think you just have to make sure you have that structure in place and you have that connection where and then again, we've had situations where maybe people didn't work out because that wasn't the right match for them. Not everyone can work from home. Not everyone can work hybrid. It is, again, comes back to a values place as well.
Your leadership plays a role as well.
Right.
Because it does, I think it does take a little more thought and planning to make sure you're staying regularly connected to those people you're not seeing face to face every day.
And I think a lot of it has to do, I mean, and I'm not going to throw any leaders under the bus here, but I will say it. I think a lot of it has to do if you can trust your people. If you have to control everything your people are doing, or everything has to be done a certain way, or like people don't have ownership in their own roles or their own mastery around that, then you can't have it. Like it just won't work. But if you trust your people and you let your people kind of be their own master and like this is their specific thing and you train them on the values and what their mission is and all those things and you give them the accountability, you should be able to trust that they're doing their job. So I think that's also an issue with the leadership and remote piece as well.
Drop them in the chat now. Doesn't look like, I think that was all we had, Suman.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so we're all over the place. We're all over LinkedIn. You obviously can reach out to us. I mean, we aren't just a recruiting business, guys. We're a people business. So we recognize that recruiting was just part of it. Like, great, we can find you great people. How do I keep them? Like, because we're like as we're talking about the customer, your client experience is all about, again, what is it, 80%, 70%? What was that stat? How your people feel at the organization. And so much of that has to do with the very beginning, how they felt during that recruiting process, how do they feel during the onboarding process, and how are they continuously feeling? So we're a people business. So we actually can help you with all aspects of this. If you guys need some help with this, you can sign up our newsletter, and we love talking about this stuff as well. So we'll definitely be doing some more webinars about it.
A one-on-one. I mean, we found like most businesses are, yeah, there's things that a lot of businesses need, but they're pretty unique as well. So if you have some unique challenges you want to chat about or you want to see how we could potentially help, you can schedule those one-on-ones with either Suman or I. Our information is there as well.
Awesome. Well, we want to say thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you guys at the next one.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.